Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to another episode of 4133 the podcast. I'm your host, Smitty Eagle. I got a special host with me today, man. Shane Haff of Chalk Talk. How you doing today, Shane?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing okay, man. The state of the Eagles, it's up and down right now for us, but we getting to the point where we kind of seeing the road be paved. We got some new coordinators that we brought in Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore. Would you like to touch on some of that?
Sure. Yeah. I was really excited by both of those hirings. I feel like Eagles fans were pretty excited generally about the Kellen Moore hiring and a little more skeptical about the Fangio hiring. So maybe it makes sense to start with Fangio. Um, and I understand that, people want a shift in how the Eagles play defense. You saw Jonathan Gannon run a quarter style system 2 seasons ago. People didn't like it. They want to blitz more. You want to play more press coverage, those sorts of things. And then Sean Desai was hired this year, and it just didn't go very well. I think the difference is that those are guys that ran the scheme, and this is the guy that created the scheme. And I think there's some misconceptions floating out there about the Fangio system. One of them being that he just doesn't ever blitz. And actually, Fangio blitzed about league average rates in 2023 with the Dolphins, 31.2%. He also had the highest sim pressure rate in the NFL last season. So putting linebackers on the line of scrimmage, bluffing a blitz, and bailing out into coverage. And his cover zero usage was actually the fourth highest in the league. So if you look at charting services that chart out all the different coverages, the team that they were most similar to in terms of their coverages was actually the Baltimore Ravens, a team who had a really good defense and whose defensive coordinator was a head coaching candidate, got hired by the Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald, and their defensive backs coach, Denard Wilson, a name that Eagles fans know. He got hired to be the defensive coordinator of, I think it was the Titans. There's so much movement I've forgotten now, but yeah, the Titans. So, that defense was so good, it got two of their guys claimed, and Fangio's defense looked really similar a year ago. So there's a lot of complexities to his scheme. I think it generally takes some time to install. The nice thing for the Eagles is they have been running that system for a couple of years, so hopefully the coverage rules and things are already understood a little bit. But down the stretch for the Dolphins, after their bye week, so week 11 on, the Dolphins actually ranked 7th in EPA per play and 4th in success rate defensively. And they were doing that missing both of their starting edge rushers. So I think there's a lot of reasons people should be excited about the Fangio hiring. And I said this on a show I did this morning, that people that are out on the Fangio scheme, I can promise you that you will be happy at the end of this, because it either works and you're happy, or it doesn't, and the Fangio system will be dead in Philadelphia forever. So it's kind of a win-win. If you're skeptical, at worst, you're going to have to deal with one more year of a scheme you don't like that doesn't work.
Okay, so I know he plays predominantly the 3-4. So I'm assuming we're going to see a lot more of the 5-man fronts that people have kind of been saying we shied away from 2022. Is that something you've seen when you were kind of doing your analysis of what he does?
Not so. Yeah, the base 3-4 was kind of like the initial iteration of the Fangio scheme. We're talking 10 years ago. The 3-4 has really fallen out of favor in the modern NFL. Everyone kind of bases out of nickel personnel. Now he did use base 3-4 in Miami. He ran it on about 18% of their snaps this season. But his preferred package in Miami was actually a nickel set where you use 2 defensive tackles, and then he would put 2 linebackers on the line of scrimmage as edge rushers. So it was a 2-4-5. The way I think that would play out with the Eagles would basically be, you would be looking at Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat as your edge rushers, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter as your defensive tackles, and then 2 linebackers behind that, whoever the Nakobe Dean / whoever the next guy is. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of base 3-4. I think you're going to see a lot of things that look familiar. It's going to look like a 4-down front. He did run some penny looks, those 5-down fronts this last year in Miami, but he actually only ran it on about 8% of their snaps. So I think they're going to try to get away from those 5-man fronts if possible and stick in more 4-man fronts.
Okay, so you brought up the guy I was going to next, Nakobe Dean. I still have faith in him as a player. I know the Lens Frank injury isn't a great injury to have. It lingers. But I think he needed some structure. Last year he was a little undisciplined. Do you think Vic Fangio and him in this scheme, since he had an understanding last year, will be a good fit for Nakobe? Will we be able to see a better Nakobe this year?
Yeah, any discussion about Nakobe Dean's really hard to have just because of the injury history. Like he just hasn't played very much. If he can stay on the field, I think he could be a really good fit for this system. He was number 25 on my big board in the 2022 draft. So I had a late first round grade on Nakobe Dean, and he didn't play much as a rookie. They were counting on him last year, and he was injured. He's a good fit for this because Vic Fangio wants his linebackers to be athletic. They're generally going to be kept clean by defensive tackles eating double teams, which is what Nakobe Dean did behind these same two defensive tackles at Georgia. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis ate up double teams, and Nakobe Dean was really good coming downhill. Nakobe Dean is almost an exact physical match for David Long. They're the same height, 2 pounds difference weight, 1 inch different wingspan. And David Long played at a really high level for the Dolphins as a run defender this year. And he also had 23 pressures on 88 pass rushing snaps. So I think if Nakobe Dean can stay healthy, I have a lot of hope that he could shine in a Vic Fangio defense. Now, you can't rely on that. They're going to have backup plans because this year they didn't really have the backup plan, and we saw what the Eagles rolled out at linebacker all year. But I do have a lot of confidence in him, if healthy, to be able to step into the system.
The guy everybody wants to know about, man. What's your opinion on James Bradbury? I mean, I know he regressed from his All Pro season last year. He looked lost. He looked confused. He looked unwilling to tackle at times. He looked like, as you would say, a liability on the defensive side of the ball. Is it a good idea for us to move on from him at this moment? June 1st, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. I thought Bradbury he just lost a step athletically, and you see that for corners over 30. Generally, that athletic regression isn't like a slope downhill; it's falling off a cliff, and Bradbury fell off that cliff last year. I I don't know if they'll move on from him because there's especially post June 1 that puts a lot of his dead cap into 2025, which the Eagles have a lot of dead cap piling up in 2025, and I trust Howie to be able to manage all that. But I would move on if they decide to keep him. There are ways to hide corners pretty effectively in Fangio's scheme. They run a lot of split coverages, quarter, half, like where you play quarters on one side, you play cover 2 on the other side, and the cornerback on that cover 2 side is protected over the top by a safety. They're generally like jamming a receiver and then bailing into the flat. And that's something Bradbury could do because he's a smart player. Like, he's an instinctual player. Athletically, I just saw a guy take a big step backwards this year. And so I could see you trying to use him some in that role, but really I'm ready to see some of the young guys like Keely Ringo get on the field more. And maybe you go get a corner fairly early in this draft as well. So I would move on from Bradbury. If they don't, there's probably ways they can use him situationally, but I really hope they don't roll him out as his full-time starter next year.
Uh, Another guy that Philadelphia Eagles fans love, but he can't stay on the field is Avonte Maddox. I see we have Isaiah Rodgers coming in. He's supposed to have a breakout season this year, but got suspended for the gambling issues. Do you think it's time to move on for Avonte Maddox?
Yeah, Avonte Maddox is tricky. I love Avonte as a player. He's really good fitting the run out of the slot, which is really important when you're going to play light boxes. And I thought he didn't play very well this year. It's hard to really evaluate that because he looked bad in week 1 and then he got hurt. And then coming right off the injury, you expect a guy to sort of need to work back in. And I would love to see Avonte Maddox back with the team, but I think you do have to have a really good plan B because he has shown over the course of his career that he's just a guy that's going to deal with injuries. And when you play the way that he does, at his size and in the slot and being as aggressive downhill as he is, I think you're just going to expect that a little bit. So I don't know what the contract number would look like for him. But over the last 2 seasons, he's only played in like 13 games. And that's really concerning if you're going to head into the next season and plan on him to be your starting nickel.
I think the reason I would trade him at this moment, for me, Shane, is the fact that I think he still has a decent trade value. I wouldn't say it's high. I wouldn't put him, we're gonna get a first or a second, but I could see somebody giving us a late third, early fourth round pick for Avonte Maddox. Just because of the performance he does when he is on the field, he is one of the greatest slot corners. We have the 22nd pick. Is your 22nd pick going to be focused on defense, or are you looking for an offensive guy?
I would like to see it go defense. It's really hard. You can't really go into the draft saying like we're drafting a cornerback because that's how you end up reaching. I would generally like to see a heavy investment into the defense through this draft. I could see, if a wide receiver that you really like falls at 22 and some of the defensive players you liked are gone, I wouldn't hate a wide receiver pick because the Eagles need a wide receiver 3. Currently, they've only got 3 guys on the roster that play wide receiver, and one of them's Britton Covey. If Jason Kelce retires and you want to draft an offensive lineman, I would be okay with that. I really like Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Unfortunately, he's starting to shoot up boards now after the Senior Bowl. So he's probably no longer a day 2 pick. He's going to go in the first round. But in my opinion, if Jason Kelce is coming back, you cannot spend the first round pick on an offensive lineman because they don't have a path to play this year. And you need guys that can come in and contribute. So to me, if Jason Kelce returns, it's got to be a defensive player or a wide receiver. That's really the only options I think in the first round.
Yeah, I think it's a benefit for Howie Roseman to go in with the 22nd pick, and kind of be able to BPA it. You could take the best player available on your board. I know people say BPA, but they're talking about best player available in the draft. In the draft isn't always your board, so I'm just assuming that Howie is going in with a plan. If that plan is altered, I'm pretty sure he has 2 or 3 other plans. But yeah, when you said receiver, I was like, I like the guy Troy Franklin out of Oregon. I think he would be a definite upgrade at the three position for us at wide receiver 3, even though he would be probably a 4th option. But I also know we need corner. I know we need linebacker, but this draft for me isn't deep in linebacker chain. Like I've been really doing my research, and I'm like, it's probably only 3-4 guys I'm willing to take in the first or second round, and then the rest of them is like, late picks, 5th, 6th, 7th round guys, UDFAs. It's not really a great linebacker draft, but I appreciate your insight on the defense. I see you was talking. I think on one of your videos that you was doing some work on Kellen Moore. Can you tell me what you found? Because people are killing me on Twitter that I keep defending this man. Can you tell me something good?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of work. I've got a lot of film to watch between now and next week. I'm doing a deep dive for BGN into Kellen Moore for next week. So people can check that out, and I can give some more complete thoughts by then. But I like the hiring. I think he's an experienced play caller. He checks the fresh ideas box. The Chargers ranked 8th in motion rate this year. If you exclude the last 5 games of the season when Justin Herbert was injured, they ranked 9th in EPA per pass and 10th in explosive pass rate. Kellen Moore really likes to use stacks and bunches a lot. Eagles fans should be familiar because teams generally use those against the Eagles a lot because they had no idea how to defend it last year. So he uses stacks and bunches a lot. He does a good job attacking over the middle of the field. The Chargers last year, 2 years ago, which was the year pre-Kellen Moore, they were 32nd in the NFL in percentage of their passes thrown over the middle. This year, that went to 24th with Kellen Moore. 2 years ago, when the Cowboys had Kellen Moore, they were 11th in that same metric and 22nd this year. So both of those teams threw over the middle of the field more with Kellen Moore as their OC than they did without him. So I think you can expect to see that. I think he's a good play caller. Maybe we're past the point where it's like, oh, he might be like this next like up and coming superstar, and maybe he never hit that. But I think he's got a high floor. He's gonna put together good offenses. In Dallas, he was in Dallas as the OC for 4 years, and if we exclude 2022, which is the year 2020, which was the year Dak only played 4 or 5 games, his offenses ranked fifth, and fourth against top 10 defenses. So it's not just that they were picking on. We all know the Cowboys like to pile it on bad teams. They were good against top 10 defenses. They were fifth, sixth, and fourth in points per game over expectation. He's designed a good running game. Dallas ranked 6th in non-QB yards per carry when Dak was healthy. So I think he can do what the Eagles are going to ask him to do. But most importantly, he's going to give you some answers to the blitz. Dak Prescott was consistently good against the blitz with Moore. He was second in success rate every season from 2020 to 2022. This year, without Kellen Moore, is the first time Dak was under a 50% success rate against the blitz. Now, he was still 5th in the league. He's a good quarterback. He's especially good against the blitz. But his numbers dropped off a little bit without Kellen Moore. So I think Moore will be able to get the most out of Jalen Hurts. This is going to be a big year for Hurts because Moore is going to give him the answers and ask him to read things out. It's going to be an increase in complexity of the offense that the Eagles have run. And so, we'll find out if Hurts is up to the challenge. I think he will be.
I back Hurts, man. Like, I've been kind of looking at the people though. It's been a mix of emotions towards, this season because of the 20 turnovers. It was kind of a regression at the end of the season. And then the AJ Brown situation. I don't like talking about the AJ Brown situation, but people would be mad if I didn't bring it up. Do you think there's a possibility, not about the trade rumors, but because I know that's with $41 million in cap hit, that's eerily impossible to do. But do you think it's something deeper than people just saying it's the media? Is there something deeper with that AJ Brown situation?
I don't think so. I don't really. I'll preface by saying every wide receiver has a little bit of diva in them. And so I'm not saying that's not here with AJ Brown. I think every good receiver has that, has a little bit of that arrogance and get me the ball. And I think you want that as well a little bit. So I don't think that there's anything going on here beyond like the Eagles were losing and they couldn't figure out how to get it to stop. And it boiled over a little bit. And you have AJ Brown, who's a little more emotionally expressive, and you've got Jalen Hurts, who is like the robot that will sit up there and say the same things over and over. And so you're not seeing that frustration maybe from Hurts, but you see it from AJ Brown. I think he's always going to wear his emotions on his sleeve a little bit. But no, I don't think there's really, I'm not concerned about a relationship between Hurts and Brown or Brown in the locker room. I really think winning cures all when it comes to that.
And that's kind of what I said about a situation like, he's a little frustrated. It's not only with the play calling or with him receiving the rock. Like, we lost 6 out of the last 7. Like, it's hard to be a happy camper when the last time you left the field, you was a loser. Like, it doesn't help and then it doesn't help for the media to be like, oh, he wants out. Oh, he want to leave. Oh, he trade rumors, this, that, and that. Like, and then it's from your own media. Like, I would understand if it was coming from like another team source. They were saying like this team was looking into trying to get AJ, cool. But when it's your own media from your city, and they're like, hey, I think AJ wants out. I think he played his last snap for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they should do this. I think they should do that. I'm like, it sounds good until you think about what's really going on. Like, yes, maybe he's frustrated with how it went. But I don't think he could give up on a guy who put his neck on the line to get him here, who was willing to put his neck on the line in college to get him to Alabama if he could. Like, Jalen Hurts and him have a good relationship, whether frustrated or not. I think he'll be here next season and going forward. I think I really want to say he'll be here as long as the cap allows us to keep both of them on the team.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, once you start paying your quarterback, that's going to get harder. And, you know, you look at like Patrick Mahomes, they had to get rid of Tyreek Hill eventually because they couldn't keep paying him and Mahomes. And you certainly have to make some choices once your quarterback starts to kick in his higher deal. Now the Eagles are still several years away from that, though. Hurts' contract really doesn't start to ramp up until we're a couple more years down the road, and so those are things that are things to keep on the mind on the horizon for the future. But I fully expect Brown to be in Philadelphia this season. I expect them to start talking extension with Devonta Smith as soon as they're able to. I think both of those guys are going to stick around for a while.
Well, it's kind of been, I forgot. I think it was Philly Mike that reported that one of his sources said that we kind of already told Devontae Smith before the 2024-2025 season ends, he will be extended.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise her. Howie is not in the. He is not in the habit of drafting players that play well on their rookie deals and then letting them walk. That's just not something that Howie typically does. So I would be shocked if they don't announce an extension for Devonta Smith. It might not be this offseason because you still have.
It said it's going to be mid-season. That was the report.
Yeah, I think they can do. Let's see. This was year 2 for him, so I think it's next offseason is when they have to decide if they want to pick up a 5th-year option on him. So they still technically control his rights on his rookie deal for the next 3 seasons.
I think they'll pay him this season while we're playing, just so the price doesn't skyrocket. Because Howie isn't in the price in the range of letting the price go up and you kicking him in his teeth. I mean, he doesn't let that happen. So he will pay him. I don't think it'll be the offseason just like you. I think it'll be more mid-season area. You kind of playing it out. We kind of working the numbers. We looking at down the road. We see who's on the roster, who needs to be paid. And, make sure we pay him in an adequate position. What is your stance on bringing DeAndre Swift back to our offense? I know we need a little push.
Yeah. One more thing real quick on this Devonta Smith thing.
Okay.
It's after I was thinking it's after the second season. It's after their 3rd season when you're eligible to sign extensions. So we won't hear anything on an extension for Smith until at least after next season. That's the earliest he's eligible for that extension. But I would be surprised.
This was his 3rd year, wasn't it?
No, this was year 2.
3. 9-8 season, Super Bowl season, 1st round exit.
Okay. Is it? Time flies. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Remember we went 9-8 before AJ.
Yeah, you're right. So this
9-7. My bad. 9-7.
Yeah, you're totally right. So yeah, this year was his 3rd year. I don't know how I conflated that. So yeah, it's contract eligible this off season. So yeah, he could basically sign one at any time, but I would imagine they'll get through like free agency and stuff and kind of build around that first.
What's your opinion on bringing back DeAndre Swift? I heard he came out with a number, but I didn't really get to research what the number was. I heard he kind of presented that he wanted a certain number. I'm pretty sure he wants a lengthy deal, maybe 2 or 3 years, some type of security. How would you feel about bringing him back?
So the Eagles don't have a lot in the stable at running back right now. It is not the best draft for running backs either. And I think DeAndre Swift, if he hits free agency, will be one of the better running backs this year. I mean, you got Saquon would be out there. Derrick Henry would be out there, and DeAndre Swift. That's probably kind of those top 3 guys. I'd like to see him back. I wouldn't pay a ton of money to make it happen. I do think though that one of the things Kellen Moore does well is using backs out of the backfield, and you didn't get to see that a lot with Austin Eckler because he was banged up this year in Los Angeles. But I would like to see DeAndre Swift back. But I mean, we all know it's going to have to be at a pretty reasonable number of how he is going to think about doing that. So I would imagine the Eagles are going to let him go test free agency and see what's out there. And if he doesn't like what he sees, then maybe he comes and negotiates a deal with the Eagles. But I don't think they would pay a market rate for him.
Okay, so I had kind of like this. I kind of wanted to offer him almost like what we offered CJGJ.
Yeah, that was like 6.5 or something like that.
Yeah, but I think it was only like 3 million base salary a year. But I would give Swift maybe 4.5 a year, something like that, the first 2 years, and then put the rest on the back end. You could restructure. You know what I mean? I think that's a good deal. Something like where it's like 2 years, maybe 10.5 million. You know what I mean? Where you can get out in the third year, something like that.
Yeah, so Spot Track does their free agency projections where they calculate out a market value. They list market value for him at a 4 year, $6.7 million a year contract. I probably wouldn't do that. I don't think the Eagles would do that, but it's probably in the ballpark. If you could get him, 5.5, something like that, I would
And
certainly
you
be
see where I was
interested
at,
in it.
4.5, 5. I'm a little bit off the track, but I didn't even know that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. 4.5, 5 a year. I think Howie would cut that. Maybe.
Yeah. And it's always hard to tell, too. Like, they put out their market projections, and sometimes it's accurate and sometimes it's not, because it really only takes one team that really wants a guy to drive that price up. So we'll wait and see. But I would lean that he probably ends up somewhere else. But I would be interested in seeing him back in Philly for sure.
What makes you think he would go somewhere else? I mean, I don't see our road to victory with another running back. Like I don't see us Kenny Gainwell as running back one.
Yeah. I think he will probably, unless he just like wants to be in Philadelphia, which as a running back, you've kind of got limited earning potential in the modern NFL. But if his motivation is to go make the most he can make, I don't think that'll be in Philadelphia. I think somebody else would be willing to pay him more. Now, if he likes the locker room, he thinks they've got a shot to push for a title, he likes playing in Philadelphia, then maybe he takes a little bit of a discount there. But if you just look
I
at the
mean, it is
financials,
home too. It is
right?
home too.
Yeah. Yeah. If you just look at the financials, I would imagine he'll get offered more by somebody else, but you never know for sure.
True, true. Because this is his first 1,000 yard season. He stayed healthy the whole season. Like his value did skyrocket a little bit. Uh, I got a Shane. I'm a Nick Sirianni guy a little bit. I kind of like the attitude. But people are so that they want him out. How do you feel about them retaining Nick Sirianni, and do you think they should have moved on with someone different?
I probably would have moved on. Um, I'm pretty much sold on that your head coach needs to be your offensive play caller. Because if not, if Kellen Moore comes in here and lights it up with the Eagles offense, I think he's probably gone in 2 years, and you have to do this thing again. And so you are relying on continually hiring those good play callers. The CEO, head coach. I mean, the Ravens have it with Harbaugh. The Steelers have it with Tomlin. Most other places, the head coach is calling plays on one side of the ball or the other. So I probably would have
Jacksonville
moved
got it
on.
too now, right? Doug Peterson don't call plays anymore, right?
That's really hard to suss out. Yeah, I think he's doing the weird thing where he lets Press Taylor call the plays sometimes, and he might let Press Taylor cost him another coaching job, honestly, because that was pretty bad this year. But yeah, I would have leaned, let him go. If you're going to keep him, they did what I would do, like go hire a coordinator on each side of the ball that's going to run that side of the ball. And it looks like they're going to try to use him as like that CEO head coach, that, the CEO, culture setter, whatever. Now, the culture didn't seem great this year when they started losing. But you had players coming out afterwards, acting like it was ridiculous that was even a question. So maybe in spite of losing, like the culture in the locker room is still good, or as good as it can be during a slide like that. So he didn't find the answers this year. Hopefully he can find the answers if it starts to go south again next season.
Um, I'm not really a fan of the CEO coach, but I also understand why. It's hard sometimes to do both sides of the ball, but it's been successful for a lot of coaches. I don't know if I would have moved on. It's hard for me, Shane, because it's like, is he the problem, or does he not have solutions? Like, is that the key? Like, he could not be the problem, but couldn't solve anything. You know what I mean? So I'm,
Right.
I'm at
Yeah.
that point with Sirianni.
It's really hard to riddle that out. Like, did the Eagles offense struggle this year because Nick Sirianni got rid of Sean Desai and that went badly? So when things started going bad for the offense, he was like, no, I'm just going to stay out of the coordinator's way. And it was on Brian Johnson. Is Brian Johnson kind of being hamstrung by Nick Sirianni's insistence on static looks and explosive plays? I don't really know on that. Could they both be, being undermined by Hurts, who does not want to throw middle of the field, wants to hunt explosive plays? It's possible. It's hard to riddle that out for sure. You have to change something, right? Like if you put the same three variables in, you're going to get the same result. So you got to change something. Brian Johnson became the something that got changed. And so we'll see. I mean, if it bounces back next year, can we say it was probably Brian Johnson? Not definitively, because we also are pretty sure
because you could also say Nick Sirianni took his hands out of the offense and then
right. And you could also say that Jalen Hurts is healthy next season and he wasn't this season. So the mobility comes back. I mean, so even if it improves dramatically next year, that doesn't mean that Nick Sirianni wasn't the problem. But if he removes himself from that equation, it can still solve it, and he could still, be that CEO head coach. So there's a lot of variables, and we'll never honestly know for sure. But if they were going to keep him, I like the approach they've gone to build around him with Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore.
All right, last one, Shane. I know you got to get up out of here. What I was going to say. With the team, the state of the team right now, going into the draft, going into free agency, who's your top three guys that you have on your list that you would go pick up?
Are you talking about draft or free agency?
You can mix it in if you have a guy, because like me personally, I don't have a safety in the draft that I would want, but I do want Antoine Winfield out of free agency. So if it's a situation like that, you can kind of mix it in. If it's a guy you want more in free agency than you do at that position in the draft, then that's cool.
Okay. So if you look at free agency, I mean, I love Antoine Winfield. I've been high on Antoine Winfield for a long time. I don't feel like Tampa Bay is going to let him get out the door. Now, if they can't come to a contract agreement with him, I think they would franchise tag him, but they've also got Mike Evans in a similar situation. You only get one franchise tag. So I would love Winfield. I talked about needing to weaponize safety for Vic Fangio's defense. So Winfield would be one for me. Another guy that's really interesting is Xavier McKinney. And he's, 25 years old. He knows Jalen Hurts. They played together at Alabama. He's set to become a free agent. He's a good run stopper. He's decent in man coverage. I would be interested in him coming over as a safety as well. And then if you look in the draft, now I don't start like heavily scouting the draft until the season's over. So I'm pretty early in that process, but if we're talking specifically safety, Cameron Kinchens is an interesting player.
Miami?
At safety. I'm not sure. I think I'll end up having him in like a into round one grade on him, which is kind of the range where the Eagles are going to be at. But there's, it's not the strongest safety class. So I would like to see some moves in free agency. I don't know that it's going to be one of those tier one guys. L'Jarius Sneed's also interesting, but I think he's probably going to get a lot of money to go be a corner. And then again, you're paying an older cornerback. I think L'Jarius Sneed's going to be like 28 next year. So, but yeah, sticking at safety, Winfield, he's like the ideal. Like if they landed Winfield, I would be so happy. I just ultimately don't think he's going to end up becoming available.
So you think they'll throw the bag at him?
Yeah, I do. I think they'll either get a deal with him or I think they'll franchise tag him and go from there.
Yeah, L'Jarius Sneed. Well, he'll be 28 at the end of the next season.
Okay.
So he'll complete the season in January. His birthday is January 21st. So right before the Super Bowl, he would turn 28.
Another one that I really like that's been in the division that I think is underrated for a long time is Cam Curl out of Washington. Ooh. I've long been a big Cam Curl fan, and he doesn't get the recognition I think he deserves because he was a day 3 guy and Washington hasn't had a very good pass defense, but I really like Cam Curl. He's young. Again, I don't think Washington would let him hit free agency, but in the coaching changes and all that, sometimes some of the old guard just gets let go. And I mean, he's only 24, so he's
he
not the
wants a
old
decent
guard.
contract. He
Yeah,
wants a
and
decent contract.
I would pay him a decent contract. I think he's a really
I've had
good
conversations
player.
with his father, Shane.
Really?
Yeah, the Commanders, they hold a space on Twitter, the HTTC, all hail to the Commanders or whatever.
Uh-huh.
He was in there he's been in there a few times. I've asked him some questions, and
That's cool.
he believes it. He believes Cam wasn't used correctly in the Washington scheme.
Yeah.
He kind of wants him to favor his way out, but you never know how that works out.
Sure.
My okay, so I know I want corner, but it's a lot of here and there. I want an Alabama corner like you want Xavier McKinney. I wanted the guy Terran. Is that his
Terrion
name?
Arnold.
Yeah, Terrion Arnold. He's one of my guys at 22. I told you Troy Franklin is one of my guys at 22. And I would go Edgerrin Cooper too. However you say his first name, but Cooper.
Yeah.
I would go with Cooper
Linebacker.
out of Texas.
Yes.
I like him too at 22. Those are my three guys. Outside of free agency, because free agency really is looking crazy. Because I've heard that Cincinnati is looking to keep T. Higgins but trade Tyler Boyd. I've heard it's a few guys out there. Like I heard the Bills aren't looking to sign Gabe Davis. So my receiver proposition could be filled in free agency. I got one guy I want to ask your opinion on before we get out of here. Darnell Mooney. I've heard a lot of Eagle fans saying they would love him to come in. My opinion of him is Quez Watkins 2.0. If you know anything about him, could you give me your analysis on Darnell Mooney?
Yeah. So I've probably watched a little more of Bears football over the last few years than your average Eagles fan, because I was a really big Justin Fields fan. I've never really gotten it that much with Mooney. Now, granted, Chicago was trying to use him as like wide receiver one for a long time, and maybe as like a slot guy, but I'm not the biggest Mooney fan. I just don't think he's ever. He's not a guy I'd want to rely on to be like a focal point of my offense. As like wide receiver 4, maybe 3. You could do worse, but he's not a very good blocker, which kind of hurts in terms of using him as a role player. You could get some special teams value out of him, but you've got a really good return man in Britton Covey already. So, I mean, if it's like a cheap deal for wide receiver 4 with maybe wide receiver 3 upside, I could get on board with that, but I wouldn't be like, oh, really excited he's wide receiver 3 now.
Well, Shane, I would like to, greatly appreciate you for coming out. I want to give you the opportunity to funnel the people to you, so you tell them where they can find you at, tell them what you got coming up, man. So, the people can come over there, like, comment, subscribe, because I love the content. That's why I reached out.
Yeah, absolutely. I am on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, actually, all at Shane Haff NFL. If you are on both Twitter and Instagram, I'm far more active on Twitter. I just post clips to Instagram from time to time. So, but I try to comment back to people as much as I can on Twitter. You can check out my whole NFL podcast, Chalk Talk. You can just punch that in wherever you get podcasting apps. I do, with my co-host, we do like full NFL reviews every week, and we kind of pitch it as like, Eagles fans are focused on the Eagles game, so we'll tell you what you need to know about the rest of the league. We talk Eagles for like 20 minutes, and then we cover the rest of the NFL in like 40 minutes a week. So we do that. We'll have draft stuff on there. We've done quarterback and interior defensive line rankings. We'll have rankings for every position group by the time we get to the draft. You can also check me out on the BGN feed. I do a podcast there with Johnny Page. We did a deep dive into the Vic Fangio scheme this week. We'll do a deep dive into Kellen Moore next week, and we'll be doing stuff like that all throughout the offseason. So definitely go check that out as well.
Listen, man, I know y'all got time. I know y'all just heard him. Listen, Shane Haff NFL. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell him Smitty sent you, man, so he can come back and be like, hey, man, I got some guys that came over there. They real loyal. Because my fan base, my watchers, fan base, however you want to say it, they're pretty loyal, Shane. So if they start coming, tell you this, they're gonna come every week. They're gonna hit the bill. I just like to thank you, man, for coming out, man, and I greatly appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and maybe we can do this again later in the off season.
Man, until next time, I'm out.